Okay, we got it wrong. Have to move it back a little bit. No, it's fine. It's fine. Pardon?
So this one round, so
Yes.
there's 90 degrees to each other.
Ah, it's all practice. See, Ivor knows how to do this thing. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Took a little bit longer to get my act together. Sorry, we're starting a little bit late. Right. Could I have a chumash, please? Shmuel, could you give me that Nikarska dos up there? That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Just I'll give it to you.
Okay. Good evening, Alan. Thank you very much. Okay, there are a few bits and pieces that I want to share with you tonight. I have a share at 9, so we might finish slightly early. Let's start with the following. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz Megurei Aviv be'eretz Canaan. Yaakov dwelled in the land. Oh, David is here. Now our vice president has joined us. Dwelled in the land of his fathers, where his fathers lived, be'eretz Canaan. Even my mother-in-law's come to watch me. Now you know it's serious.
Checking on you.
Checking him out. Is he really doing what he said he's doing?
You're not losing weight.
Make sure I'm not losing weight.
Yeah, she'll feed you.
All right. No, I thought she make sure. He always tells my daughter that he's going out to give her share. I know where he is. Yeah, he's here. Okay. Yaakov dwelled in the land where his parents lived, Eretz Canaan. So Rashi tells us an interesting thing. Rashi says in last week's Seder we read about the entire lineage of Esav. He says it's interesting. Sometimes you have a side story going on over there, and then once you get to the real story, you drop out of everything else. That's the first one I'm going to say that Rashi mentions. Rashi speaks about if a person loses a precious gem. Imagine a person lost a stone, lost something very important, and he dropped it in the sand, and he's going through, he's sifting through the sand, he's sifting. Finally, when he comes upon the thing that he wants, what does he do? Oh, thank God, I found it. Picks it up, puts it in his pocket, walks away. That's the end of it. Sand, leave the sand behind. Yeah. What's he playing with the sand for? Only to find what he dropped in the sand. He really couldn't care less about the sand. It's just he has something more important that's stuck in the sand, so he needs to get through the sand to get to what he wants. So Yaakov Avinu and his entire family, they're the main players of this entire story. There are other players. Esav. So he says, Esav, we're going through his whole story and his whole family history, etc., until we get to Yaakov. Once we get to Yaakov, we drop out of Esav. We're not even talking about Esav anymore. That's it, done. He's like the sand that we left behind. And then he says the following. He tells it's a bit of a strange, almost a strange mashal, parable. He says, Rav Moshe is here from New York. Vayeshev Yaakov dwelled. He said you had a fellow he had a camel laden up with pishton, laden up with flax. And he's going around and people are saying, where is he going to fit? Is this flax takes up so much space? And somebody said to him, don't worry about it. One little spark and whoosh, the whole thing is gone. Right? Now, sounds a bit strange, the whole thing, what that means. But what he tries to say is that Yaakov Avinu looked at the entire history of Esav. We read about everything last week. Read everything that happened last week. Esav and Esav's children and grandchildren and the kingdoms and whatever else it might be. And Yaakov says, how am I going to be able to manage this? Look how many people there are here. To which Kosh Baruch Hu says, Yaakov, you have Yosef. Yosef is the power that's there to be able to negate this entire clan of Esav. One little spark of Yosef and the entire thing goes whoosh and up in flames. Sometimes things look very, very big and it takes something very, very small to bring it down. I think if you look at Soviet Jewry, one of the things that brought down the big communist Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union was a world power. It was something to behold. It wasn't something that I didn't grow up in those days, but you know what I'm talking about. You really grew up the days of the Cold War and when people knew what the Soviet Union, what was the Soviet Union?
It was the other superpower.
It was the other superpower. There was America and there was the Soviet Union, and they were at loggerheads for years, for 2 generations. And people say, you know what brought them down? A few Jewish refuseniks. few Jewish people that were going and knocking on at different places of power and saying, let my people go, etc., etc. That was part of what brought down the entire Soviet Union. You have a few little people. But Rav Yaakov Galinsky, whom we mentioned, Stefan's here, I hope you're feeling better. Rav Yaakov Galinsky, whom we mentioned last week, says the following. He said he was a survivor he was actually in Siberia, and afterwards he was sent to a camp. He was in a DP camp in Germany. And the people in the DP camp in Germany, they wanted to learn. They didn't have much Gemara Sfarim. They found a few bits and pieces of Gemara, and they made photocopies of it, and those were the Sfarim. That was what they were going to learn. It was amazing. And the Jewish people in a DP camp, you've just gone through the greatest tragedy. You've seen people butchered and killed, etc., and they were looking for Gemaras. They were looking how they would be able to go ahead and be able to continue learning and continue doing their Jewish thing, so to speak. So now you have these people in the DP camp, and they've printed these Gemaras. They made like 100 copies of the different bits and pieces of Gemara that they had, and they brought it to whoever it was, the joint, whoever made these copies for them, and they made them these farm, and they came to this Rabbi Galinsky, and they said, Rabbi Galinsky, there's going to be a celebration of the printing of these Gemaras. Would you like to join us for that celebration? He goes, why not? He says, can we ask you to speak? He goes, look at me. Tattered clothes, short trousers. He didn't have anything on, he just had nothing. Just had gone through the war in a DP camp. What does he have already? He says, you can't ask me to get up and speak in front of everybody. Why do you need me to get up and speak? No, they'd like you to. But he says, listen, the room you are going to be in is one of the rooms where Hitler, Yamach Shemo, presented his book, Mein Kampf, for one of the first times to the German people. He says, is that so? I'm coming. And he did, and he came and he spoke about this week's Pasha. He says, you look at what was the world power Germany. And you say to yourself, who would have thought that, who was going to beat them? It took almost the entire world to gang up on them. France and the British Empire and the USA. They all had to gang up on Germany. And there are, I think we have a book in the shul, if you want to look at an interesting book in shul, it's called The Hidden Hand in the Holocaust. And it's about a Kodesh Baruch Hu, how certain things happen in the Holocaust. And you read them and you say to yourself, if some things hadn't happened just when they happened, who knows what would have happened? Rommel was at the gates of Eretz Yisrael. Went back home for a party of some sort. And something happened and then they didn't overtake Eretz Yisrael. But the people that were living in Eretz Yisrael at the time, they were more than afraid. They were fasting, they were davening. They knew Rommel is around the corner. He's already in El Arish. I think that's where he was. He was down in Egypt, crossed the Suez Canal into Israel. They would wipe out the entire Yishuv Chas v'Shalom. Whatever there was in Eretz Yisrael on way of Jews, there would be zero left. Zero. They wouldn't have left a Jew. And they knew that. Religious, irreligious, everybody knew this was really serious. And yet, somehow, you see these things happen within the Holocaust. And what you thought was going to happen didn't happen. And God moves around the pieces and the chess pieces, sometimes in a way that's very mysterious. And we learn that not everything works the way we think it works. And God's moving things behind the scenes. But who would have thought Germany? Who would have thought that we would beat them? It wasn't so simple. It wasn't something to be taken for granted. And Baruch Hashem, we managed. We won. Yeah.
Even 2 weeks before the end of the war, it wasn't obvious that we were going to win.
No, wasn't obvious. No. Wasn't obvious. And so therefore, but Rabbi Galinsky says, the fact that I, the little Jew from Bialystok, wherever he was from, stand over here in the room where Hitler, Yamach Shemai, came and presented his book, Mein Kampf, to the German people. And I can stand here after the war. Yes, you know what? I might not have trousers. My trousers might be torn. But I'm here. And I'm here to tell the story. we the Jewish people have survived. And not only have we survived, we've printed Gemaras in the hall, and we're celebrating the printing of a Gemara in the hall that was used to celebrate the printing of Mein Kampf. Says Rabbi Galinsky, that's what this Pasha teaches us. That is the story of this Pasha. That little spark can outlive all that massive, massive load that looks almost inconquerable, and yet still survived. Idea number one. I saw something very interesting tonight about, when we read about Shechem. Have a look. We'll start from chapter 37, verse 10. Chapter 37, verse 10. He's told his brothers, and now he's telling his father. What page are we on? Page 200. Thank you, Michael. Page 200. He tells his father and his brothers the story of the sun and the moon and the 11 stars, and his father gets upset at him, and he says to him, what's this dream that you're dreaming? What, me and your mother and your brothers are all going to come and we're going to bow down to you on the ground? Do you think that's really going to happen? But by Kanu Ba'echov, verse 11, his brothers were very jealous of him. Aviv, but his father, Shamar Sadavar. His father was hoping that it would, at one point or another, come to be true. Vayelchu Echov, his brothers went, Liros Etzon Avim Mishchem, to shepherd the sheep or the flock of the father in Shechem. Rashi says, look at the verse, Vayelchu Echov, and his brothers went. Vayelchu Echov, and what is the tam, Shmuli? What's the tam underneath Echov? Esnachta. Esnachta, yeah, can you see that? It's like, it looks like a circle and an upside down Y. That's a good way to put it. An upside down Y. Yeah, can you see that one, Michael? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That tam, Iris is here. Michael is here as well. Okay. Michael, say hi to your wife.
Hi, Iris.
Okay, there you go. Now she knows you're here as well. Okay? His brothers went. Vayelchu Echov, his brothers went. And an esnachta. What would you say an esnachta, if I had to say an esnachta was a form of punctuation mark? In English, what would you say it is?
Colon.
It's more than a comma. It's a semicolon. Yeah? It literally is splitting the verse in half. So it's a very strange thing to say. A strange thing that you have. Vayelchu Echov, the brothers went, stop! Stop. Semicolon. Well, why do we put a semicolon there? His brothers went. Semicolon. Would you put a semicolon at that point in the verse? Very strange place to put a semicolon. You know, it's one. His brothers went to shepherd their children, to shepherd the father's sheep in Shechem. That's one sentence. There shouldn't really there shouldn't even be a comma in there. Would you put a comma in that? I think that's one long sentence. The brothers went to shepherd their father's sheep in Shechem. That doesn't. Is there any? How do they punctuate it now in the article?
There's no comma in here.
There's no comma. I wouldn't have thought so. Yeah, it's 1 second. Now his brothers went to pasture the father's flock in Shechem. I don't know why he writes now. Okay, but that's what happens. That's what the verse says. So where does this semicolon come in? So Rashi says, "Vayelchu Echov." And there's Rashi actually doesn't say Vayelchu Echov. He says S. There's 2 dots on the S. Yeah, you see there's 2 dots one on top of the Aleph, one on top of the Tov. So Rashi says there's a dot on the S to say that they went to shepherd themselves. What does that mean? They went to shepherd themselves. Who shepherds themselves? You know, you always say say to my kids, "Okay, kids, I'm going out with mommy. Shepherd yourself while we're out." Daddy, what are you talking about? Shepherd yourself while we're out. Yeah. So who shepherds themselves? So I saw Rav Hirsch explain this, and I think there's a very big lesson over here. Many lessons. But it says his brothers went to shepherd themselves in Shechem. What it means is the brothers had a very big problem now. What's their problem? And Rav Hirsch points this out. He says, what's the difference between the first and the second dream? What does the first dream say and what does the second dream say? And what makes the second dream even more grandiose than the first dream? The first dream is the bundles of wheat. You got 11 bundles of wheat and Yosef's bundle of wheat. And behold, we are all gathering these bundles of wheat. And behold, mine stood up and stood straight. And yours gathered around and made a circle around mine. And they bow down to mine. End of first dream. Who does that mean that Yosef has dominion over, really? What would that mean in general? If you look at that dream, what would that connote to you? Dominion over his brothers, but his brothers only. That's the 11 and the 1. Next dream. V'nei hashemesh v'yarech, the sun, the moon, v'chanas ha'kochavim, and 11 stars, mishtachavim li, bowing down to me. Now it's already not my stalk of wheat and your stalks of wheat. There's me, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they're all bowing down to me.
11 stars.
11 stars, correct. When I speak about sun, moon, and stars, what am I talking about over here now already?
Parents.
Parents, and more importantly, says Rav Hirsch, a much more grandiose dream. Because the first one seems to be domination over his brothers. Here, there's a bit more of a smack of world domination. Because if I'm in charge of the sun, and I'm in charge of the moon, and I'm in charge of the stars, that's a much more grandiose idea than just being in charge of 11 stalks of wheat, or 11 bundles of wheat. That's nothing. Big deal. Bundle of wheat. No, I am on top of the sun. I am on top of the moon. Bigger idea. Much bigger idea. And therefore, they are looking at him now, and they're saying, originally Yosef had these ideas of domination amongst his brothers. He's now moved from domination to world domination. Excellent, this would be mine. Yeah? That's what he's sounding like. And that's what they're seeing him as. They're seeing him as this crazy man who wants to dominate the world. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at Yosef, and that's what they see. So they're now going to Shechem. What happened in Shechem? Let's remind ourselves of the story of what happened in Shechem in last week's Pasha. If you look back to last week's Pasha, chapter 34, the story that happened in Shechem is the following. Nateitze Dina bas Leah, Dina the daughter of Leah, Asher Yoda Yaakov, which was born to Yaakov, goes out Liros B'nos Haaretz. Shechem and Chamor, the Chivi sees her, and he violates her. And then they try to convince him, and they're not convinced, and they say, okay, you know what? We'll give you our daughter as long as you are willing to circumcise yourself. They go and they circumcise themselves. And then once they go and they circumcise themselves, the Shimon and Levi come in and they kill out the entire city of Shechem. So that is the story that happens in Shechem. What therefore does Shechem, what kind of connotation does Shechem have to the brothers? What would it then be? On the one hand, yes, it'd be a very violent connotation. But on the other hand, what did they do in Shechem?
They were in charge.
Okay, they were in charge. But what were they trying to do in Shechem? What was their main focus there? To try and stand up for one of theirs. Yeah? Shechem was a place where there was a feeling of brotherly love. Do you understand what I mean with that? Because they look back at that place and they say, this is the place where our sister was violated and where we as a family said, this will not happen to a member of our family. We are not going to allow this to happen. And we came together as brothers and we did what we had to do. Okay? Why they killed everybody, etc., different discussion, not for tonight. Maybe we learn Vayishlach a different time. And that's discussed amongst the Mefarshim. Who gave them a right to kill everybody? What right did they have to do that? Okay? But the brothers are now going to have some introspection. The brothers are now going to look at themselves and to say, what's going on over here? We're very jealous. We're very upset. We actually hate Yosef. That's the words that they use. Sinna. Vayisneu oso. They hated him and they couldn't speak to him peacefully. And now they're going to go to a place and say to themselves, let's calm down. Let's focus. Let's see if we're right or if we're wrong. Where is a good place to go to conjure up the idea of family, a united family, a family that stands up for each other? The best place to find that is Shechem. Because Shechem is a place where we as a family learn to stand up for each other. And therefore, let's go back to Shechem, tap into that power, and see how we feel after that. Do you hear what I'm saying? Yeah, Michael? Other Michael? Elliot, you happy with that idea? Do you understand what I'm getting at? Yeah? So that's the idea that they're trying to get to. And therefore, I think there's a very very powerful idea over here, which is, in our lives, we have certain places, we have certain events that stand out. I'll give you an example. I was sitting with somebody tonight that I was in Kola with. He was our Rosh Kola, who was in charge of the Kola while I was going in the Whitefield Kola. And I said to him, it's hard to believe, but I've left over 8 years ago. I've been in the shul for over 8 years. So you might say to me, okay, Rabbi, what did you do in those 8 years? What's happened in those 8 years? Hard for me to say. I look back almost at a blur. I say, well, lots of bar mitzvahs and lots of weddings and lots of kiddushim, and people have had children, and sadly we've had funerals and we had stone settings. And we've had disagreements with certain people here and there. But a lot of life is like that. If I asked you, Michael, in the last year, how many events stand out in your mind in the last year? Probably 10, 20, something like that. What happened 2 weeks ago on Wednesday? Nothing. 3 weeks ago on Monday? Not much. Patience, whatever.
Tuesday.
Pardon?
Tuesday.
Tuesday was a big day.
Rabbi Shir.
Oh, Rabbi Shir. Hey, Shir, right? Do you see what I'm saying? If I look back a month ago, I probably could tell you very little about what happened a month ago on a day-to-day basis. Might be able to remind myself. What's scary? You go online. Ever go to Google Timeline? You ever see that? I have that. I do that sometimes because I need to try to reconstruct where I've been in order to give the shul a report of my mileage. Because I get, if I drive somewhere for the shul, so then the shul reimburses me for mileage. A normal thing, So, you're like, oh, where have I been this whole month? So I go back to my timeline, and you can watch it zigzags through, where you've been. To your boys' school, to your girls' school, to where you learn, back to shul, back home, back to the school, back to this, back to that. And you travel around, and you're going through, oh, yeah, that's right, I went to visit somebody in hospital. There it is. So, David's here. Hi, David. David Zaks has just joined us from Israel.
Oh, good.
Yeah. See, you got a big welcome from everybody around.
Give him best wishes.
Best wishes from Shmuley Marin and everybody else around.
From Michael.
And from Michael Goldstone and from everybody else here. So, you have very few events that stand out. But those events that stand out will stand out for a reason, because they evoke certain emotions. Whether it is sadness, amongst many of the funerals, I think, for example, the funeral of Stuart Foster is something that will almost always stand out in my mind. Even if I'm in this job for 30 years, I'll probably look back and say that was one of the saddest stories that I had in the entire rabbinate. Because it's just a very, very sad story. Had other stories. We have people that were over 100 years old, and passed away very peacefully. That doesn't stick out in your mind in the same way. Don't remember it like that. Not because the person's unimportant, but because that event didn't carry that amount of emotion with it. My son's bar mitzvahs will stand out in my mind. You'll always remember your son's bar mitzvah, right? It's something very important in your life. It's something that you always think back to and you say, I remember how many people came, and I remember how the Kiddush was, and I remember how lovely it was, and how proud I was, and that the family was here. There's so many things that you remember. It's very, very nice. It's a beautiful thing. You remember your bar mitzvah. That's a happy occasion. You can remember an occasion in your lifetime that's a very proud moment. My induction. I guess I'll always remember my induction. Very proud moment. I've been in the shul I've been in the shul probably a year and 4 months already. So it was a bit longer because the chief rabbi hadn't come up for a long time. The current chief rabbi comes up more often than the previous chief rabbi. Chief rabbi hadn't come up in a long time, so the next time it was coming up was February 2012. And I became rabbi in October 2010, which was a bit strange to have an induction then. On the other hand, it was a very, very beautiful moment in my life and in my rabbinic career. And you think back at it as a moment of pride. A moment that I shared together with the community, that we as a community came together to celebrate something. And there are moments like that stand out. And in everybody's life, there are those moments. And the question is, can you tap into those moments in times of sadness, in times of stress, in times of unhappiness? You take people that are unhappy. Let's say you have a couple that is unhappily married, sadly. And they are trying to retain their relationship, rebuild their relationship. One of the things that they will often do is they will say, do you remember that trip we took together, our honeymoon? Or do you remember our 10th anniversary and we went to Paris together? Do you remember that? That was a special time. And they're going to try to tap into, we were so happy then, what happened? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Why now suddenly are we not happy with each other? Where have we gone? What's come apart? Can we tap into that situation? Can we tap into that happiness? Can we tap into that specific story and pull some happiness from it and transplant it into our lives now? And sometimes you can, and sometimes there's too much water under the bridge. Sometimes you cannot. But it's something that people will normally do. It's a normal thing to do. That people want to look back at the big occasions in their lives where they've had certain feelings and they want to take those feelings. Somebody said, hi Phil. Somebody said a lady came recently to shul, and I think she was a bit biased because it was her simcha, but everybody will say that about their own simcha. Somebody said, Wendy said to her, so, whatever her name is, how was it last night? And she says, oh, amazing, amazing. I'm telling you, if I could take the atmosphere and bottle it and sell it, we'd be billionaires. That's what she said. Okay? Beautiful thing to say. Is she right? I don't know. That's how she saw it. But that's good enough. If she sees it like that, that's how her feeling was about how her son's bar mitzvah went off in the Hilton Suite. Somebody asked me, I might have thought it was an awful party. But that doesn't matter because it doesn't take away from her experience. And her experience was that this was one of my most amazing occasions in my life. And therefore, and she says, if I could take that atmosphere, if I could bottle it and hand it over to other people, what a wonderful thing it would be. Oh, I almost finished anyway, don't worry. You won't need the Chumash that much anymore. What a wonderful thing to be. If I could take that feeling and transport it with me. Somehow be able to tap into that and feel those feelings a different time. The brothers realized that. And the brothers said, in order for us to be able to have a calm mind, in order for us to realize if we are doing the right thing, totally shunning Yosef. And we see that's what they do. They sell him down to Egypt. It's awful. Awful story. I remember telling girls once in high school, imagine if your sister went and hid one night and you took her jumper from school and put it on Barry New Road and you had like 6 cars run over it and it's got tire marks across the entire t-shirt. And you bring it home and he goes, is that Rivki's? Do you know if it's hers? I know this fright you'd give your parents. Why is her jumper with tire marks? Well, what happened to her? A crazy story. But before they're going to cut themselves off completely, before the brothers say, this is it, we've made our decision, Yosef needs to go, they need to sit in a place where they can say to themselves, we've thought about this well, and even though they made the decision that wasn't correct, but they thought about it well, and we thought about it in a context that would help us maybe see the good. The worst thing to do is to make decisions when you're angry or when you're upset. Have you ever made a decision when you're angry? How many times have you come back to regret those decisions? But at the time when you were angry, that seemed the most logical, best decision that you could make. This is what we need to do. And your wife said, calm down. No, I'm not going to calm down. He's wrong, and this is what we're going to do, and he's going to learn who he started up with. He's going to see. Yeah? Pardon? They were actually going to kill him. And then they stepped back. That's a different discussion. Again, also something about it, but we don't have enough time to discuss that tonight either. We usually end up seeing only one or two things. But they want to say, before we kick him out, let's go to a place that will evoke feelings of brotherly love, of connection, of connectivity between the family. And let's see, can we bring those feelings back? And when I have those feelings, I feel, oh, we're such a beautiful family. We're such a beautiful family. Can I then go ahead and say, what about Yosef? He's got to go anyway. If at that point I still can find it in my heart to forgive him and to see him as part of our family, and I still see him as the enemy, then there's something wrong. Then he must be the enemy. If even when I tap into that, I can't get beyond it. But out of anger, they weren't going to do it out of anger. They wanted to sit and think it over. Now we'll say we don't really agree with their decision. We think maybe it was wrong. Okay. Everything God had his plan also. Don't forget, God has his plan in this whole thing, and God also has things, and they work a certain way or don't work a certain way. And sometimes we're just pawns in the whole story.
How many years was it between the events at Shechem and when they massacred them, and then they went to...
Okay, so the events of Shechem will work as follows. Yosef was 6 years old, or 6 or 7 years old when the events of Shechem happened. This story happens when Yosef is 17 years old, so there's 10 years between it. But as I said, even 10 years later, there's certain memories, even from my childhood. I don't remember that many things from my childhood. We all don't remember that many things from our childhood. There's certain things that stick out in our childhood. Certain days, certain memories, certain things, that sticks out to them. From 10 years ago, that was a moment, it was a momentous occasion where we as a family got together and stood up as a family. And let's come back to that situation and see, can we garner up any good feelings for Yosef? And if we can't, then it means there's something deeply rotten going on. There's something deeply wrong going on, and there's nothing that we can do to improve that. That's why they went to Shechem. And that's the connection, and that's what they went to shepherd themselves. They went to check out where are we up to. They went to see, look after each other. Say, guys, let's have a think. Let's see where we're at. Is this really where we're at? Are we making a mistake? Are we right? Are we wrong? Yeah, they looked like they were shepherding the sheep, but really they were having a conversation, trying to get to grips with what is or isn't happening around. And they came to their conclusion, and we see what happens from their conclusion. That's the rest of the Sefer, all the way through Shemos, is going to be the conclusion of what came from their conclusion. But always remember, we have certain situations we can try to tap into. Find the right situations to tap into at the right moments, and it can make a huge difference for all of us in how we feel, in how we project ourselves, in how we behave with other people, and in general how we see ourselves. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoy this, please share it with your friends, and if you want, you can catch it on YouTube or subscribe to the YouTube channel. Have a good night.